Welcome to The Writer's Dream. Our show is a forum where authors can talk about their books, how they write them, how they publish them, and how they market them. It's also a program for all readers and writers, people who are interested in writing and people who are interested in reading good books. Please visit us on Facebook. You can ask questions on Facebook, and we'll try to answer them here on the show. We also appear on YouTube. Today, our guest is Jasn Edwards. Jasn Edwards is the edutainer. Okay, and he is the author of the Will Allen series, and his books really revolve around helping children and probably adults who read them too to conquer our fears. And his three books are Will Allen and the Great Monster Detective, Will Allen and the Ring of Terror, and Will Allen and the Hideous Shroud. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the writing of books? Because I believe you were also started as a teacher, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I began as a teacher, and when my children were born, well, if you know, I'm sure, the teachers, for the most part, especially I was working in a Catholic school, don't earn a lot of money. So my wife and I, we needed both of our incomes. And, well, we didn't want our children growing up in a daycare center if we could help it. So I gave up the teaching job at that point and took a night job and raised my children during the day and worked at night. And my wife worked during the day and raised the children at night, which is why we're still married.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to ask you, are you still married to the same woman? Because having a schedule like that almost ensures that you never really get on each other's nerves.
Exactly. And it was while being Mr. Mom that the inspiration came that brought me to write these stories. I mean, I always loved stories, from the time I was young. But, I never intended to share them with, how like some people like to sing in the shower? Mm-hmm. Well, they sing in the shower because it gives them joy to sing, but they're afraid. They don't really want to have anybody hear them. I was the same way with stories. I loved stories, but I would write stories in the shower, which actually kind of made for some very sloppy stories because the ink would run and it would be a sloppy mess. But
yeah,
anyway,
I can imagine.
Yes. I enjoyed doing it, but I never really intended to share them with other people. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I had this grand inspiration, I said, oh my God, this is so great, so I have to share this with people, that I really decided to devote myself to the time and energy it took to really be an author.
Now, were you working at the same time?
Yes. At the outset of when I wrote this, I was still working my night job, and it was a button-pushing, knob-turning, mindless, mind-numbing job.
So you gave up teaching?
I had given it up for that time. Mm-hmm. It was intended to be short-term. Mm-hmm. But we never came up with a better solution when it came to child rearing. And besides, I found out I really enjoyed it. I was around, it was kind of the oddball, which is kind of the usual thing for me. But I was kind of, the Mr. Mom in the world of, mommies. But I found out I really enjoyed doing that. I really loved it. I mean, that's why I went into teaching in the first place. I love working with kids. And working with my own was such a joy for me. I didn't want to give it up.
Are you back in teaching now?
Well, yes and no.
Well, explain.
I do, yes.
Explain to me.
That's what being the edutainer is all about. I do programs, educational programs, fun, exciting, entertaining, interactive educational programs at schools and libraries, which I kind of liken to, being a teacher to me is kind of like being a parent, being an edutainer is kind of like being the grandparent. Where I get to come in, I have fun with them, I get them excited, I get them inspired, but I get to leave before, I have to do any of the diaper changing. So, it's like I don't have to do any of the dirty work.
So I understand that you have won an award. You've won an award from the Mom's Choice Award for Family-Friendly Media.
Yes,
and
I was
also,
very gratified by that.
Which I think gets more to the point, is you've been recognized by the Anxiety Disorder Association. What are your books about? Tell us about Will and his books.
Well, the reason I received that recognition from the Anxiety Disorders Association is because they recognize that my books are good at helping kids confront their anxiety issues. And basically, that's why I wrote the book. That was the inspiration that led me to write the book in the first place. You see, I was inspired to write my books. Everything I do now began from a toilet. Yeah, you see, yeah, I know, everyone, but
do I really want to ask this question?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
You see, when my oldest daughter was around 4 years old, she was traumatized by the sound of one of these loud automatic flushing toilets. It was broken, it started flushing while she was sitting there, and the loud noise freaked her out. And
Understandable.
yeah, again, and we thought it was kind of funny that she was scared of toilets, but one of the things we discovered about fears is they take on a life of their own, and they grow. You know, at first, she didn't want to go back to the park that had that toilet, which is fine. You could live a perfectly happy life and skip one park. But pretty soon, she didn't want to go to any park. And then she didn't want to go to restaurants or to malls or movie theaters, any place that might have another one of those automatic toilets. So a girl who once loved to go play soccer and softball, go to movies, go out to eat, she wanted to stay home in her room. And that was pretty sad. My wife and I, being the good parents that we are, we sent her to a shrink. You know, we sent her to psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors and therapists. But it wasn't doing any good. So because we couldn't find someone who could help, I invented someone to help. I invented the great monster detective. Because I found, you know, you can't really tell a 4-year-old, you must face your fears, you must confront your anxiety. You know, it's like whoosh, right over their head.
They go right under the bed and stay there.
Exactly. So my daughter loved to read, so I felt the way to reach her was with a story in which the character, and I didn't want to make it her because I didn't want to personalize it too much, but in which the character learns to confront their fears and overcome them. And so I created this. Now for kids, again, you can't make it preachy. For kids, this is just a fun fantasy adventure mystery story. But what it really is a metaphor. All of the monsters literally are fears that have taken on a life of their own. That's what a monster is, after all. I mean, what makes us describe something as a monster, after all? It's something that makes us go, ah! Right? It's not just because it's big and nasty looking.
So her fear of the monster toilet, has the monster toilet shown up in the book?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
Because I bet a lot of kids are afraid of public
That was
toilets.
like, that was, yeah.
I mean, when
we
you're
thought it was
little
strange.
and you have to go, I mean, the toilet's huge and there's a hole in the butt. I mean, it's a pretty scary thing.
And again, that's the thing, to an adult, it doesn't seem that way. We're saying, it's just a toilet. Just like lots of other things that kids are scared of, adults can't relate to. You know, it's like, how could you be scared of a clown? It's just a silly, funny clown. How could you be scared of an ant? It's a tiny little thing. My daughter and other children needed someone who could see these things the way they see them as monsters, and help them confront them. And that's what the great monster is, and that's what he does with some very special tools. He teaches kids how to face their fears, how to confront their monsters and overcome them.
So Will Allen has this monster? Is this monster his, like, partner?
Well, that's one of the secrets of the book,
Oh.
is that Bigelow is himself a monster, but he's motivated by different things than other monsters. Because again, any feelings are what give us life, and it's what gives life to monsters and all of the other characters that come to life in this story. And he's a representation of a different feeling, a different need. But yeah, all of these monsters are literally fears that have taken on a life of their own. And all the things that you want to tell a child about how to deal with fear, you have to tell them, you know, face your fear. You know, that's not going to work. But in this book, in order to conquer the monsters, Will Allen has to face his monsters. He has to confront these fears. He has to seek out the truth about them. Because when we see the truth about things that we're scared of, they're not really as scary. And when we're willing to confront them, they shrink. And literally, the things that are abstract to us are literal in the book.
So what fears does your monster?
Well, again, the fears in...
Really, the question I'm asking is, what fears are you facing or helping children to face in the books?
All different kinds. You know, the fears, there's several of them, several monsters in the first book, and they all represent some very basic, simple fears that are common for children that age. Again, one of the monsters is a flying shark, which represents a fear of mine. I saw Jaws when I was younger, and I never wanted to go swimming again. You know, it's like the flying shark. There, you know, the tree outside the window that spooks them. There's a monster tree, and storms that spook kids. But the ultimate monster, the hidden beast, his secret, deepest fear, which at this age is the worst kind of fear, is the fear that his parents are losing their affection for him. And again, it's really the deepest fear he has, and that's the final monster that he has to uncover in order to confront it and finally triumph over his monsters. And in the end, he becomes so good at fighting monsters that he becomes a monster detective himself, and then in the sequels, he goes on to help other kids deal with their fears and anxieties, with their monsters.
So what you've done is you've given the kids a little, like, almost cartoon character to relate to.
In a sense.
And to almost, it's almost like a guardian angel. You can put him in your pocket, and every time you have a fear, you can pull him out and have
Well-
him go after that fear
Well,
with you.
I hadn't considered it when I wrote it that way, but yes, I suppose so. Will Allen is still a character that has his own fears and foibles, but he now goes out and helps kids. And again, kids, as they grow older, get more complicated and deeper fears and whole different kinds of fears. So as we go through the series, they're dealing with different fears and anxieties as the main theme in each of the books. In The Ring of Terror, for instance, the person who Will Allen is helping, Timmy Newsom is the character's name. His parents are getting divorced, and again, it's that fear of loss, that separation. In the third book, Will Allen and the Hideous Shroud, it's more, again, as they're growing older, they're dealing with more social issues. It's more about dealing with, fears regarding to fitting in, fears regarding to not living up to the expectations of your parents. Again, there are all kinds of, those are the final fear, the final thing that they have to confront, but there are all kinds of little monsters in the way to actually confronting the final one.
So when you do a presentation in schools, how do you do that presentation?
Well, now, I got started doing programs at schools and libraries. At first, the idea was I wanted to go to schools and libraries because that's where the kids who are going to read the books are. But I didn't want to go to schools and libraries and just be, here, buy my book, I'm a great author. No, that's not my style. With my background in teaching, I wanted to educate. But that's not what kids want. I wanted to make this a program that kids wanted to go to. I wanted to make it something fun and exciting. Kids want an adventure. And we want to teach them vital skills. So I wanted to come up with stuff that would do both and take advantage of my personality and what I'm capable of creating to produce that. So the first program that I produced is my monster hunt, where the kids track down and capture a monster that's loose in their library. But in order to find and catch the monster, they have to deal with stuff that's even scarier than monsters. They have to do stuff that's, in case kids are listening,
Could it be,
educational. It's like,
could it be reading and writing?
well, there is some reading and writing involved, yes. But you see, in order to find the monster, what the kids actually have to do is they have to track down and decode clues that they've hidden on clue cards sticking out of books all over the library. See, I come in as a monster detective, I'm called in to track down and catch monster, but I'm a terrible monster detective. I'm a bumbling fool, Inspector Clouseau type. But with their help, I uncover the first clue, and then they each get their own set of clues, so they all have their own clues. So it's never, I didn't get one, he won, well, I'm going to lose. They all go at their own pace. They all succeed. But once they get their clue, it gives them a hint about how to find and catch their monster, but then tells them that their next clue is in a book about, for example, Mexico. And this is where it becomes educational. Because they look around at a gazillion books around and say, how am I going to find that? Well, I'm not a good detective, but I'm good at helping them learn how to use the library system, how to use the library catalog, how to use the Dewey Decimal System, how to find books in fiction, in nonfiction, in biography. So the kids find books of all different kinds, all by themselves, all over the library.
The librarians must love you.
That's why I've done now that program at over 100 schools and libraries.
That's great.
Because the librarians do love it, the kids love it. It's mostly through word of mouth that I get more work, but it's just been very well received because again, it is for the kids. It's a great adventure, but they're learning without knowing it. And they learn this in one session. Even kids who have no exposure to the library system in advance learn this in one session, which is, it's not like they're taking notes. Okay, biography is organ of the, they just learn by doing. That's my philosophy of teaching when I was a teacher, and it is now. Kids learn by doing, so they just go and they learn by actually doing it, and each and every one of them succeeds in doing it.
What did you teach when you taught?
Well, actually, I was certified for social studies, which was, aside from the fact that I love social studies, what I had the most credits in, so I was able to get certified in that first. I would have probably gone on and gotten certified in science too, because I love science also. Yeah. But again, I didn't stay long enough for that to happen. But I actually, in my time, taught a lot of different subjects. I worked as a substitute, and then I worked even when I had full-time job. I mean, I was split a lot of between a lot of different classes. I taught an English class, I taught a physical education class, I taught a computers class, and I taught economics class. So I taught a lot of different
Do you
subjects.
teach middle school or high school level?
Both, actually, I did in my time. My longest stint was in high school. I actually wanted to teach high school or even higher levels because I wanted to inspire kids. I wanted to be like Socrates, and question them and open their minds to a big, wider world. But I found, partially with my experience in teaching and also partially by being a parent, that I actually have more fun. I mean, I love teaching both, but I have more fun, I think, with the younger kids because I can be a complete,
They're less cynical.
energetic fool, but I get to enjoy it more.
Yeah, I taught middle school, high school, undergraduate college, and graduate school, and I found that the difference between middle school and high school is height.
And attitude, I think.
And actually what happens is the kids become, as they become more acquainted with the world, they become more cynical, and they become less able to, how shall I say it, immerse themselves in the nonsense that we like to do to make them involved. And so, yeah, it is more fun to teach middle school kids. I found that so as well. So what's next?
Well, again, from that one program, working, again, at libraries and at schools, librarians love the program. They said, yeah, but they have to be able to read and write for this program. Could you do something? We love you, but can you do something for younger kids? And again, I wanted with the same attitude. Kids learn by doing. And I don't want kids to come to one of my programs and then leave saying, I just met a great author, even though they did. I want them coming out of my program saying, I can be a great author. So I created a story crafting program, which we call Destination Inspiration. And in that program, I introduced them really quickly to the elements of story crafting, but then we turn around and we rely on the kids. And the kids, together with me, we create and act out a story right there on the spot. And the kids create the characters, and the kids choose the settings, and the kids make up lines of dialogue and decide how the plot's going to advance. They get to be the stars of the show. And I narrate and act it out and fall down a lot, which for some reason kids really like that. They can be kind of mean. Look, he hurt himself. But we just have a ball with that. But again, they're learning story crafting by doing it. And even the little shy ones, they're like, don't call on me, don't call me. By the end, they're like, it's just got this infectious energy. And again, that's been a wonderful program, and I do follow-up writing workshops with that.
So this has become pretty much a full-time
Yes.
endeavor for you.
That's now basically what I do full-time as my occupation.
Right, so let's go back a little.
Aside from writing books, of course.
Well, yeah, are you planning, you have 3, are you planning more?
Yes. Again, I'm currently editing the 4th, and I have the first drafts of, I mean, the entire series is plotted out. And I've written the first drafts of all but the last one, which I'm sort of halfway through the first draft of. But yeah, right now I'm editing the 4th one and preparing illustrations. But yes, I have this entire series plotted out. And again, I wanted to be a writer because this inspired me. And once I got started, this, just like the monsters, took on a life of its own. And these stories, I can't say wrote themselves, but they really did. They just flowed. And
Now,
I'm continuing to write these.
let's go back to the psychology part of it and the fear. What kind of research did you do about fears and overcoming, besides the experience with your child?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because as an undergraduate, I was an undergraduate major in psychology, which you would think prepared me for dealing with this, but not at all. It's a very specialized field, and so I did a lot of research on the internet. I actually went to the sites of a lot of these organizations that now I went to the Anxiety Disorders Association site and researched about different types of therapy because I wanted to model, literally, what's in the book are representations modeling out the steps for dealing with fears and anxieties. But again, to a kid, it's just like, this is how we conquer the monsters. So I did a lot of research online and through books at the library about, what are some of the different types of fears and anxieties, how they affect kids at different ages, and what are different therapies that are effective. But again, that's something that I had, even with the psychology background, had no experience with.
Yeah, well, you're right, it's very specialized. How did you publish the books?
Well, that would be a long story, and believe me, if you've heard anything now,
Condensed.
the short story, right? The short version is always good. All my friends say, you want the long version or the short version?
No.
Short version.
Condensed.
Yeah. Well, when I first wrote this story, and again, I was still working full-time at night then, so I sought out publishers in the traditional way, and I joined all the writers' organizations